When your goals or your outcomes are exclusively focused on achievement, it's very easy to achieve and lead a very unfulfilled life. We mutually know people who've sacrificed some of the biggest sacrifices, wives in relationship with kids, in exchange for achievement. And then once they achieve, like, I got no one else to celebrate this with. And they can't get back what they already gave up, those sacrifices.
Today, I speak with Patrick Precourt, a lifelong entrepreneur, a competitive athlete in rugby and MMA, a real estate investor since the late 90s, and a peak evidence-based performance life coach. Pat is the founder of the Elite Edge Experience with 2 U.S. Navy SEAL partners focusing on health, wealth, family, leadership, and impact. He often says his superpower is helping ordinary people do extraordinary things. Transformation is the goal, not just temporary change. Patrick has inspired me personally, has encouraged my own mindset growth and the pursuit of more impact. Turning into our conversation today will help broaden your perspective, both professionally and personally. In our conversation, we discuss the desire for certainty and comfort versus the benefits of embracing uncertainty, the difference between chasing achievement versus fulfillment, the mistake most people often make, how to find and pursue your purpose continually throughout your life, a new perspective on what it means to be intelligent, how to transform your behavior permanently, and much more. Please welcome Mr. Patrick Precourt. Well, Pat, it's always a pleasure to engage with you when we have the opportunity to have conversations. We've known each other for, we're probably going back 10-ish years. And
Yeah.
I still remember the first time I met you. I think it was with our good friend, Jason Medley. And I met you and I knew some of your background. I knew you'd been in MMA, and I was a little bit awestruck there because you just have that look. And I play tennis, so I'm a string bean. I'm strung out. So, MMA and me don't go together too well. So that was something that caught my attention. But, as I learned more about you and about your life, what you stand for, and that's where we have a lot of commonality. I think, our beliefs, our philosophy about family and God and country and then leadership. Certainly I've had to learn a lot about leadership, and I'm always learning about that. And you've become a person, as you've gone through your iterations of life in learning and experience, and you've really evolved into a person who really is in the position of transforming other people's lives. And we can dig into that a little bit today. I think as overall context, my tribe is a lot like where I came from in my life. And a lot of us, we took the formal academic route, saying, well, if we can climb the ladder and get the degrees and the licenses and go high that level, that was going to provide us safety, security, and a level of certainty in our lives because, well, we all want that, don't we? We want a nice, placid life. We don't like to upset the routine. I just want to live the perfect life going back to the 50s and 60s when apparently, you watch the sitcoms from back then. It was all good. Ozzie and Harriet and Leave It to Beaver. And what a wonderful time of life. It's like, what happened to all that? That's what I want. I want that so bad. Yet that's not reality. Yet there's so much that's missing today in our cognitive thinking. I guess the dissatisfaction that there's in people's lives, even people who look on the outside. They live in the great neighborhoods and they can provide great experiences for their families and the vacations. And they got the stuff that makes them look good. But inside, oh man, there's stuff missing. And I know that's the heart of who you are. So let's talk a little bit about this dissonance between the certainty that everybody wants, but the uncertainty that's out there. And just, that's grating. We can start with wherever you want. I know you're leading a cohort called the Edge Experience. You got some Navy SEALs with you, and it's just go wherever you want to, and we'll just follow each other through some great conversation today.
Let's just start out with kind of what you're leading with, which is certainty, which is, it's in our DNA. It's human to desire certainty, and we're uncomfortable in places of uncertainty. So I want to kind of take this down maybe 2 different paths, right? One will start with the trap of comfort, right? Comfort and certainty are somewhat synonymous, and it's really a trick in that we can get tricked into believing we're comfortable because we have a high level of certainty, even though we're not really comfortable. And if we've come out of uncertain areas of our lives, we'll be more predisposed to fall prey to anything that will contribute to higher levels of certainty. Age does this as well. Once we conform to a comfort zone, which the only way a comfort zone can even exist is void of fear. And the only way it can be void of fear is if we're not doing anything new or different. We're not creating anything. We're not trying anything different, right? And the logical mind almost goes, well, I'm not going to do anything new, but I'm going to keep doing what I was doing. I'm just going to stay the same and I'll be okay. And at first, it seems almost logical, right? But the truth of it is it doesn't play out that way. It's impossible to play out that way because one, if you stay the same and everything around you is changing at an extraordinary rate, guess what? You're going to grow obsolete in a very short period of time, right? That'd be like saying you got all this cash under your bed in the 1930s. You're just going to keep it. So when you get this old, you're going to have all this money. No, everything changed around you. That money is worth nothing like it was. We're the same way, right? That's number one. Number two is once we're in a comfort zone, we tend to start to protect that comfort zone. So instead of expanding and growing and becoming more, we contract and become less in the name of preservation. And before long, there's nothing left to our soul where we just exist. Now, I'm sure you could think through certain people. I wouldn't ask you to any names. People have gotten to a certain part of their life. They kind of plateaued out. Like, no, I'm just going to maintain what I have now. And I always ask this question, like, for what? To what end? Till you die? And then that's your victory, right?
Are you a dentist who's tired of running on a treadmill, but not sure how to reduce your dependence on trading time for dollars in your practice? Will 2025 be any different? What would it look like for you to create enough replacement income not dependent upon you, to take time off away from your practice or even make practicing optional? This January, I'll be leading a small cohort of docs in what I call the Catalyst Group. Small group where I will be teaching the fundamentals of how to invest in alternative investments, how to hedge against what I see coming in the marketplace. We've had some really big upruns in the market since the GFC, Great Financial Crisis, some years ago. We had a continued propulsion of the financial markets coming out of COVID 2020. This will not go well in the future. And there's also the sentiment, the consumer sentiment of having a new president who is bolstering confidence in the marketplace, which is always good. But the headwinds that are there ahead of this administration are so deeply embedded that one has to be very, very careful and understand that the models that we've seen in the past that have worked to an extent are likely not to work in the future. Hedging against downside risk is going to be more important than ever. Understand that inflation is here to stay, but in the near term, there's going to be some serious corrections in the markets, financial and tangible assets. Where are the access points? Where are the places you can go and be more of an advocate for your finances? This is what I teach. It's what I've done all my life. It's what I love to do with other people. This is where we'll be going with the Catalyst Group coming up in January. Your time, this small cohort, which I've done several times over the last several years, is one where you get personalized attention. It's a small enough group where I will give you personal feedback. You'll learn to help you figure out where your money needs to go and how much you might want to allocate to alternative investments. You'll learn the ins and outs, the due diligence, how we risk averse our investments in the marketplace with all the certainty that's out there. And there'll be a real focus on what I call the freedom of time. Yes, everybody's all about making more money and creating more wealth and more net worth and equity. That's important. But how do you convert that into what we all really want? And that's more time. Even if you're not ready to retire yet, having a day or two a week reduced from your schedule because you've got the replacement income, you've got confidence that you've got equity outside of your practice or your business that's working for you, you know where it's at, you know how it works, will give you the peace of mind to take some time off, which is the biggest gift you can give yourself. It's the biggest gift you could give your family. This is risk-free. You come to the Catalyst Group, and if it's not for you and not what you signed up for, no problem. I'll refund your money in full. I want people who really are wanting to be on the forefront of advocating for their financial future. If that's you, I would say this is time for you to jump in. If you want to make 2025 a difference maker for you, to turn the corner, to actually see a pathway out at the right time from what's holding you back, this may be the key. To learn more and join me in January, go to freedomfounders.com/catalyst group. That's freedomfounders.com/catalyst group. I've made a difference for hundreds of other doctors and their spouses, and this is a step in the right direction for you. Jump in. Let's make it happen for 2025. I hope to see you there.
So that's one side of certainty and the risks that we run into. And then, of course, the other side is cowering to uncertainty. And I don't mean that, I'm not being derogatory to anyone, but it's the way our fear response to uncertainty, to not knowing. So if all fear is anchored in one thing, just not knowing, uncertainty, almost by definition, it's not your uncertain outcome. You're not knowing. Our mind plays weird games on us. Our mind, instead of saying, what if this works out? What if I win? What if they love me? We go, what if it doesn't work out? What if I don't win? What if they judge me? And we go to all of these outcomes that we don't want to experience, right? We're playing this through our head. And then we realize that there's nothing we can do about it because we're making up these future events that don't exist in today. So there's nothing we can do, right? And when we're out of control, can't control them, we're out of control. Now we start getting stressed. We stay in this mindset long enough, we'll get a little anxious about it, right? And it's just a snowballing effect, right? Uncertainty leads to triggers fear. Fear leads to future forecasts we don't want to experience. That leads into lack of control, stress, anxiety. And it happens in a flash, though. We've trained ourselves to let that play out really, really quick in our lives. Does that make sense?
It does. And what I'd like to know from you is, where does this come from? Because we look at babies and infants who are just getting, on their knees and crawling to maybe they're getting up and a little shaky on their feet. But what do? They want to explore everything. There's no fear. In fact, we have to kind of cage them sometimes or put a harness on them because if we don't, they'll crawl, across the street or something or go somewhere dangerous. So they're out there exploring everything. What happens to us? Where does this change go from no fear of the unknown, let me explore everything, to, whoa, I better stay, as you said, in my comfort zone because it's safe here?
It's taught and it's learned. So both of those exist. Baby doesn't have it, virtually fearless, with some exceptions, right? But baby doesn't have it. And because they haven't been taught it yet and they haven't experienced it. Even go back to, I'm glad you brought up the kids thing, because you look at how quickly kids learn. They're on a straight up learning curve, right? And they don't predispose their outcomes based on their means, meaning they don't say, let me evaluate my means to determine my ends. They go, that's what I want, and I'm going for it. And I'll figure it out along the way. And you look at when we learn to ride a bike, I don't know how old you are, 5 or 6 or 7 years old, right? And our dad goes, hey, we're going to teach you how to ride a bike, little Johnny. Johnny didn't go, well, hang on. Let me update myself on my physics and momentum and understand gravity a little better and the steering thing and leaning and balance. Let me see where I'm at with all that first. And I said, no, that's my path to adulthood and freedom, right? Those are the two things we connect. We're going to become a big boy and we're going to have all this freedom. We ride a bike. So you just go for it. And the meaning behind the outcome, meaning behind the goal, and the desire for it, power through that. And they turn what others would consider failures, fall down, into the steepest learning curve possible. And we learn our way into it. But over time, adults, we've done it to our kids, no different. We've expressed that fear is not a positive thing. It's a negative thing. No different than pain. We express that pain is a bad thing. When pain enters our life, we avoid it. We anesthetize it. We distract from it, right? That's in all physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain, and pain as a direct, association with fear. So the two are just bad. We try to avoid them. How do you avoid fear? Don't do anything that you don't know the outcome of. The only way you're not going to know the outcome of it is having already done it. Otherwise, there's a risk at hand, right? And you go back to pain. The fear is we're going to experience some level of pain, whatever we make it up to be, right? And like I said, pain, mental, physical, emotional, they're there for a reason. As a doctor, you know this. When our body experiences pain, it's because we got to stop doing something we're doing. That's the general message to our body, right? If we hit that with a drug and anesthetize it, it allows us to keep doing that thing till it gets worse. Think about mental and emotional pain where it's not as objective as physical pain, right? And how we anesthetize over and distract from mental and emotional pain in our lives and then keep doing the behaviors that created that pain in the first place. I tell people, Dave, that pain is like the greatest insight or intelligence from the universe to tell you exactly what you need to stop doing and what you got to do next. If we would just shut up, stop, and lean into it and listen. Don't distract from it. Don't make it go away. Don't drink it away at the end of the night or however you anesthetize it, but listen to the pain. And our lives would be so much easier if we followed that little path there.
Pat, it seems that when we're younger, and I'm moving away from the infant stage, when we're young and we're heading out, maybe we graduate high school or maybe college, or we're going into a business or our first job or career, and we're thinking about starting a family. Talk about an abundant vision of euphoria, and I get to be independent, and I'm going to build this life or lifestyle. There's not a lot to lose at that point. If you're not married, you don't have kids, you're only responsible for yourself. There's not a lot to lose, and so it's like, well, why don't I go for it? And we do. Most people do. Most people step out into something, whether it's the pathway they stay on. Most times it's not. We iterate, we change. But as we get older and we start to feel like we've created some kind of a platform, whether it's materialism, wealth, knowledge, a network of community people. I mean, you can list all the things that, well, I feel like I built this up. And if I push the envelope back into an area of being uncomfortable, then I'm going to risk losing what I've built. So that this risk averse behavior that overtakes us as we get older, it's normal, but how much of it is good because we should be risk averse at some point? But to your point earlier, if we stop growing, if we stop pushing the envelope, then we die. We actually really die, or we physically, mentally go through a dying process. I mean, we've seen people that have had great careers and they retire, right? And they retire to what? Nothing next. And usually it's physically, mentally, it's a downslope relatively quickly in many cases.
I would suggest that this comes down to the discussion between achievement and fulfillment. And oftentimes we find ourselves protecting achievement over what we really want, which is fulfillment. And oftentimes people will live their entire life on this earth, Dave, and never be fulfilled, even though they have an ungodly amount of achievements. They have the wealth, they have the finances, they have the status, they have, the quote unquote power, but they're not fulfilled. If you're going to really address that, we got to go back a little earlier in life. And when we're making our life plan, instead of going into college and saying, which degree is going to make me the most money when I come out, which is exclusively then focused on achievement, what degree is in most alignment with, who I'm meant to become at this moment in my life? Now, you may change. Many, many times people do along the career. That's okay. But at the time, that was your purpose. Basically, you're being authentic to who you're meant to be, which you can then achieve both fulfillment and achievement. But when your goals or your outcomes are exclusively focused on achievement, it's very easy to achieve and lead a very unfulfilled life. We mutually know people who've sacrificed some of the biggest sacrifices, wives in relationship with kids in exchange for achievement. And then once they achieve, like, I got no one else to celebrate this with. And they can't get back what they already gave up, those sacrifices. More to your point, when we get to, we're there now and we're, in our 50s or maybe even our 60s. And yeah, it's really easy to protect achievement over our desire to be fulfilled. It's the wrong decision. So Jeff Bezos has a decision-making filter, because every decision starts with this. Is it reversible or is it permanent? The thinking goes, if it's reversible, collect some data and make the damn decision and then learn from the feedback, whatever the feedback is. If it's not reversible, slow down, put a lot more thought and, maybe get some outside insight into it, make a longer decision. But like 99% of the decisions, Dave, are reversible. Even though when we first think about them, we don't see them that way, but they really are reversible. And somebody listening to this, if they're in a position where they're trying to decide, I would maybe drive them down the path of asking a little better questions, right? Who are you meant to be? Or how do you want to leave this world? What kind of impact do you want to make? How do you want them to see you when you're not here? Because everything you're doing today is reflective of that. And they're not going to care about your status or your power or your bank account. They're just not.
When do you find that these questions of deeper meaning, purpose, fulfillment begin to hit people? I include mine in that same group. I was working my way through school. It was about achievement, no question. I had achievements, right? That was my life, and certain things in my life turned the kaleidoscope where I started to see differently, and achievement didn't become my goal. But where do you see this appear, and what do you see are the signs of either an internal or external cry for help? How's that come about?
I don't know that I have the exact answer on that, but I would suggest that one part of that is certainly in the category of mindset. Not everybody gets here. Some people get to the point where they believe the best of times are behind them and they can't affect the future. And I think at that point, you go into a self-preservation mode. You preserve what you have because it can't get any better. There's others that believe that everything they do every single day alters the future and changes the future to their desires if they're doing it intentionally, and they can only make things better no matter what. I don't know that it's an age, Dave, as more than it is a mindset in that space. And I had a conversation a couple of days ago with a young lady in her 77 years old. I say young lady because she's got the heart of like a 20-year-old. She's starting a whole new business, and she sounds young, and her energy is young, and her spirit is young. Her best of times are ahead of her, not behind her. I think we get to choose that. So one of my partners, he's a career military guy. He was a Marine for 4 years. I met him up at UConn playing rugby, and then he went into the Navy SEALs for 26 years. And we had some tough conversations when he was retiring out of the SEALs. As many career military guys do, they lose a sense of being, of who they are, because for so long, this was their identity, right? And what I shared with him was the idea that everything you've done up till now, the Marines, going to school, coming out and going to the Navy SEALs, that was not the big stage. Now, there was a time in life, just like there's a point in your life, Dave, you believe becoming a dentist was your big stage. That was your platform. That's what you're going to do. That's your purpose, right? And like you, my partner, that was just training to become who you needed to be to lead the next part of your life. And without that background, you couldn't possibly pull off who you are now. And he runs these camps with me for men, and he runs a kids camp as well. But he couldn't do all that if he didn't have all of this life wisdom experience behind him to get to this. Does that make sense? And he ain't slowing down. There's no off on him. There's no end. There's no, hey, I can only do this to a certain age. There's no retirement in it.
He does camps with you for men, and he's doing camps for youth. Let's talk for a minute, because a lot of my audience and the viewers that are listening to us today have kids of various ages, right? And I think as parents, we always want, quote, the best for our kids. Well, what does that mean, right? It can mean a lot of things. What's the message? I mean, you also have raised, a wonderful family, and none of us as parents ever do it perfectly, but what would be the message you would try to have accepted to your kids, not that you haven't, to let them be the best they can be and not put the marker of achievement, at the forefront? How do you let them find their way, right? But be open to the bigger picture, the fulfillment side?
Yeah, another great question. So my kids are, they're not young, but they're not really old. I have my baby, as I call her, my 19-year-old, my Danielle, and Samantha's 26 and Patrick's 27, or just over 27, right? Samantha's back and getting her master's, and Danny's going to veterinarian school. Patrick's out in the working world. We have this conversation often, and even at that age, he gets hung up on like, what am I doing? What's my purpose? All of this kind of stuff, right? And what I share with all of them, David, is the idea that you don't have to know your life purpose, like the purpose. You don't have to know that, but you need a purpose. You've got to put a flag somewhere that matters to you, that's congruent with who you're meant to be, and then arrange your goals in alignment to getting to that flag. And really what you're on is you're on a discovery mission. You're growing up. You're collecting data points. You're learning about life. You're getting more data to fill in so that when you get to that flag, you can make a more informed decision as to what's next. Nobody told me this stuff, and nobody told you this stuff, right? Because we didn't talk about this kind of stuff, right? I planted a lot of flags through my career. From my rugby career, which I played for many years, I did home inspections for 10 years, did real estate investment still do real estate investment, real estate education, and in the personal development space, now much more kind of narrowing it down a bit, right? And it's not done. Every flag I plant and every flag that I get up to, I just say, all right, that's just another episode of training, teaching. That's it, to prepare me for what's next, whatever that may be. I take the weight off of my kids' shoulders, and you don't have to know the big thing. I don't think some people fully embrace their purpose, why they're here on earth, until their journey on earth is about over. Yeah. Looking back. And of course, Steve Jobs made a really good reference. to that as well, right?
Yes.
Like you don't have to know the big purpose, but you need a purpose, and your goals have then got to be stacked in alignment to achieve that purpose. And the goals are just a way to measure progress. They're not an end to anything. They're just progress markers. That's all goals are in this context, right? But don't stress yourself about a bigger picture and don't waver. Commit to that. Take your time. Figure out what that flag looks like. And once you figure out, commit to it. Don't waver. Don't be chasing random opportunities or shiny objects. And bury your head and get there. When you have that data, feedback, reassess. That's one of the things I try to pass on to them. Simplify the thinking about who they got to become in life. I don't know how anyone knows that until they're much further along in the journey. They just don't. And of course, there are some people occasionally that know their thing right up front. I believe they're the anomaly, though, not the norm.
Let's talk a little bit about the edge experience that you and your partner are doing. I'm interested in hearing more about that. I know you started that a year or so ago, and I think you've done, is you say 4 or 6 of them, four so far, and there's 6 more coming up.
Yeah, last year we got 6 scheduled for this year.
What's the objective there? Who's this for? What are these men looking for? What kind of transformations are happening? And then you can tell us a little bit more of the details of the actual experience, which would be fun to hear.
Yeah. So the whole name is the Elite Edge Experience, right? E3. Most of them we do up in the mountains of Colorado in an off-grid environment, which also includes no internet, which is really, really important to the experience, just to cut off outside stimulus. The whole experience starts with breaking all of your normal stimuluses, triggers, whatever you want to call them in life, right? It is very much cloaked in a high level of uncertainty in that you don't know what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how long you're going to do it for. You know nothing. And that's very intentional, David, in that most of the gentlemen that come to this are they're like you and I. They like to be in control. They like to know what's happening. They don't like surprises, right? But that's not how life operates. And it's to start, the whole idea is we put men in uncomfortable experiences beyond what they would normally experience in real life in order to expand them. So when we come back and are confronted with them, we're much more adapt to handle them. Makes us better leaders, fathers, parents, business operators, influencers in all areas of our lives, right? I can't reveal like all of the things we do, but I'll give you one. So we were out there a couple weeks ago. We sit at about 9,700 feet elevation wise. It's not a physical challenge. And everybody associates like Navy SEAL with rah, rah, alpha, who can yell the loudest and all. It's not like that at all. Most Navy SEALs are ridiculously humble human beings that love to teach and give back. And that's our cadre right there, right? So it's not a physical challenge, but it can be physically challenging because you're in the mountains of Colorado and there's no flat. You're either going straight up or you're going straight down. That's just how it is, right? But at the bottom of our little mountain is the Arkansas River, which is right now is, I think, 6 or 7 degrees Celsius. So they don't know this, but we bring them down and I put them in this river and I keep them up to their chin in the water for 5 minutes. Now, knowing what you know about the body, 5 minutes in, sub 40 degree temperature water, you're at high risk of hypothermia. You will experience levels of hypothermia in that time. However, you can actually adjust your physiology and breathe your way through it. It's not easy. It's even more difficult when you have no idea how long you're being held in there. It's then even more difficult when you're being told that if you got to go, you got to go. It takes a more courageous man to stand up and be the first man out than it does to cower from that and hurt yourself. So we'll say that, and then we'll come over here and talk about how you never let a teammate down. You stay as a team.
Yeah.
Create this mental conundrum, right? Intentionally. Because sometimes that's how life is. You get between a rock and a hard spot, and you've got to figure out how to deal with it. When you add a physical challenge to it, it makes it that much more difficult to stay in our left brain, our critical brain, and overcome the emotions of fear and maybe even anger now and everything else that's creeping in that self-doubting voice, right? And make critical decisions. Then we'll go through a series of questions that requires, thinking answers. And we're very in tune with watching everybody and making sure nobody's getting in trouble, But that's just an example of how we put people in extraordinary environments to prepare them for ordinary environments that sometimes get a little out of whack back at home. And the level of confidence and just like self-worth and self-value that comes out of these is amazing. And then there's a lot of what I call debriefing that goes along with everything we do up there. So it's, you come in on a Tuesday night, it's all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, all day Friday. You go home on a Saturday. And there's a debriefing process I use. It's really simple. What worked, what didn't, what did you learn, and what are you going to do differently next time? And that's the important part. If we honor the debriefing, we'll always grow from every experience. And that's kind of the piece from it, right? That you don't just come through this. Like, I actually came up with a new definition of intelligence, Dave. I think you'll like this. Instead of being, which really traditionally is really the rate at which you memorize stuff. That's how I interpret IQ, It's the rate of application of new information. How quickly do you apply new information, with the idea that information applied converts it to a knowledge, like a working knowledge. That's how we truly learn, right? And that's the idea of the debrief, that tomorrow we're going to do something different, right? We're going to act differently in the same type of situation. So that's just an example of part of what we do. You're training a lot of very, very decent basic life skills, but the idea is to add a level of mental and emotional chaos to the environments and train ourselves to still operate in a critical mind and not let our emotions get out of control. And the challenge with our emotions is that we either, and this is just society at large, we teach kids that you're not in control of your emotions. Therefore, we'll provide environments for you that you'll be safe, or we'll give you timeouts, time away where your emotions will feel safe, versus telling them that we are the gatekeepers to our emotions. Emotions aren't good or bad. How we choose to either react to them or respond to them decides whether or not they're good or bad, right? And emotions, like it's, well, how can anger be a good emotion? Well, if emotions are a form of energy, which scientifically they are, right? And they're an equal energy, then what if we just looked at emotions as a form of energy that instead of letting the emotion make the decision, we use our critical mind to make the decision, but the emotion becomes the energy, the force behind applying our decision. If you look back in history, there's been tremendous, amazing things done in this world that finally got done because people got pissed off enough. They got angry enough to do something about it. And if that anger wasn't there to drive their desires, they would have never had the energy to execute what they really wanted. Does that make sense?
Oh, so true. So true. So I'm curious, then you've done 4 of these cadres. What are some of the responses after the fact when these men go back into their, quote, normal lives with family and relationships and business and stresses, as you've heard them report back over days, weeks, months after the fact? What are you hearing? I'm just really curious as to what they're telling you that it's allowed them to do or to be.
Yeah. So common words are much greater clarity, more focused on their purpose, and finally understand their sense of purpose, much greater, higher levels of confidence and certainty in themselves. So all of the above. But let me share the part that matters to me, Dave. Everybody says they want change. Oftentimes people do change, but then they boomerang back to who they were. So I get a little deeper with these guys. One of the parts that I dive into and I kind of pull out of them has to do with where they are in certain beliefs in their lives. All humans have limiting beliefs. It's like every chain has a weakest link, right? It's just natural, makes sense, not bad or anything. But some of those limiting beliefs do throttle us in life, and the idea that we can't outperform our belief system. Our beliefs drives our behavior. We extract certain beliefs out of them. And I don't look for changing people. I look to transform people. And the difference is when you change someone, they can change back. An example of that would be somebody who does like 75 hard, which is a great program, by the way. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but it's just something on the internet. You do hard things for 75 days. But oftentimes people will end at the 75th day and then go back to exactly who they were. That just pissed away 75 days as far as I'm concerned, because it didn't address any of the fundamental beliefs. When they look in the mirror, they still see the same human being looking back at them. And we can't outperform that person. That sets our ceiling. Transformations, you become someone so freaking big, you can't fit back in the place you came from. You're a different human soul. And that requires changing at the belief level. We have to change certain fundamental beliefs that are no longer in alignment with who we're becoming. Does that make sense?
If I hear you correctly, then what you're saying is some people might think that they are adopting some new habit. People say, well, if you do a habit, 21 days or something, it becomes ingrained. But what you're saying is a habit can easily dissipate if the mental mindset part has not been transformed. A habit can just be given up easily and you revert back to, as you said, the person you were previously.
Well, yeah. And it actually won't fundamentally be even formed. We may think it is, might resemble a routine, but it's not a habit. The subconscious is not convinced that you are a different human being, that you are someone different. All you have to do is look around at how many people we've seen in life that shed a lot of weight, lose a lot of weight because they really want to lose a lot of weight, but then they snap right back because they were disciplined, they're committed, they're hardworking, they checked all the boxes,
right?
But they didn't address who they were. You can't stray from who you are. It's as simple as that. We can change that, but if we don't change it, we can't get away from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
And this happens in all areas of life. If you're a guy and you just can't stay married, it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with the female. You may think it is. You may think you got to find the perfect spouse. It is not about that.
Right.
You're not the guy that deserves to be married. That's all. You can be, but you're not now. Those are words I use often with people. They don't sit comfortably at first, but if we think about them, acknowledge that they actually become empowering. Say, everyone that you and I know, including you and I, we have in life exactly what we deserve right now to the exact degree that we deserve it. And it doesn't always feel good because then we look at some of the voids in our life. We're like, I didn't deserve this, right? We do, because it's based on our decisions and actions and how we've played out through life, right? And we can deserve something different by becoming someone different. That whole be, do, have, right? If you want to have something that we don't currently have, we got to do stuff we're not currently doing, but we first got to become someone that we're not yet. It's a simple formula once we get into it.
That's really, really good. Well, this is great. I really want to go deeper with you on this, and I think it's a subject that's, it's so relevant to everybody, wherever you are in your pathway. We talked about the younger cohort, but any of us that are down the road in life and family and business career, that fulfillment piece, which, I certainly found that to be way greater my North Star, but it took some time to get there and going through some twists and turns. And you are helping men identify those things and actually have the opportunity to do something about it rather than just twist and turn and just, sometimes people fall out. People fall into addictions. Come back to your anesthetize the pain. Well, I've done all these things in my life. I look the part to society, the man inside I'm missing. So what do people do? They find other ways to anesthetize that, and those never work out.
Here's the fundamental problem with like anesthetizing emotions, whether it be fear, shame, anxiety, right? You can't drink away your fear and not drink away your happiness. The act of anesthetizing is non-selective of your emotions. It wipes them all out. You can't distract from your shame and not distract from your gratitude. You can't overcome your anxiety with drugs or alcohol and not take away your joy. So effectively, you become an emotionless human, which is a hollow soul.
Yeah.
Then we're stuck. Then we lose all sense of direction, purpose, drive, meaning. All of that goes out the door once the emotions are no longer experienced. It's a spiral, and it gets dangerous at that point.
Pat, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for giving your time and your insights. The work you're doing it's marvelous. It is it's transformational, and I think it's helping so many men. So thanks for providing this. Best way for people to connect with you, and what's the best place to do that?
I'm easy to find on social media. I included my email and my phone number. I don't answer the phone. I do respond to text. Easy to get hold of. And even if anybody just wants to explore some of these topics any deeper, I'm wide open to it.
As I think about my own life and then the opportunity I've had to work with so many other people, young people, people of my peer group, professionals, business owners, people who really in society's lens are successful people, what I find is the older we grow in life, the more susceptible we are to wanting to find and maintain certainty, safety, a comfort zone. I think we lose that ability when we're very, very young. Think about when we're toddlers and we're just learning how to crawl and then get up on our little two legs and then explore and run around as, 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, where it seems like our parents had to always try to rope us in, right? Put a chain around us, put a fence around us, because we were always exploring, always wanting to broaden our scope, to move out of our comfort zone, if there ever is one, when we're a child. But as we grow older, we become more risk averse. There's some normalcy to that. We become more cognitive of the fact there are risks in life. And so we do apply some common sense to not going off the radar in terms of taking risk. But there's a sense also of getting to a place of some kind of stability, some kind of comfort, and saying, I don't want to risk anything more, even though there may be something bigger out there. And bigger doesn't have to mean more money, more wealth per se. It can mean just a more satisfying, purposeful life. And I think that's what people are lacking many times in life, even those who have made a lot of money and really don't seem to have a care at all about money. But what's really missing in their lives? I think it's because they didn't explore enough. Maybe they got lucky, they worked hard but got lucky, made a lot of money, and then just wouldn't push any further. For most of us who aren't mega multimillionaires, I think, again, seeking to find what really satisfies our personal goals and our personal achievements and how we have impact in life, I think what comes down to the end of the day, that's really what we want. Who do we impact? Starting with ourselves, our families, and then whoever else in our lives we want to support. Doing that in a grander scale means you've got to break out of that comfort zone. You've got to embrace that uncertainty that we talked about in this episode. When I thought about taking additional risks, setting aside my feelings of inadequacy or maybe the risk I might be taking, I often consider, is the change or the step forward that I'm considering making, is it reversible or non-reversible? And if I see an opportunity that is reversible, then it's more likely I should take that step. Again, if it's not reversible and it may cause some undue damage, then maybe that's a place to be much more careful. But if the change, the push forward that I'm looking at, if it is reversible, even though reversing it might require time, money, extra effort, if it is reversible, then I'm probably going to push forward and give it a shot, because that's how you test new ideas. That's how you test your own innovation, and the factor of going forward and not staying in that comfort zone that oftentimes keeps people in a cage. As I have the opportunity to work with and mentor and coach those who have been successful in their businesses, their careers, their practices, I often do find that there's a feeling of there's nothing more to do after this. After maybe doing what they've done, the training they've had and the success they've had in a certain career, once they've gone past that point in life, that there's no more that they can learn, that they're done, that one career is all they can do. And I think that's really a shame, because there's always the opportunity in life to evolve, to embrace other hobbies, skills, dimensions of one's life that one hasn't even considered. And the problem is most people won't make those explorations early enough in life to have them at their forefront when they're ready to make a change. And so they leave their long-standing career, business, or profession, and doing so, they've left a lot behind. And they think, well, my best years are behind me. No, they're not. If God's giving you the additional years, weeks, months, whatever to live, and you've got a brain, then there's something you've got to still give. And I think not pursuing that is what causes people to go downhill very, very quickly after they leave their primary profession or business career and go into their retirement mode. I think retirement's a bad, bad word, and I hope that you're not thinking about embracing that. Seeking transformation over change requires putting oneself in a different environment. Whatever the environment you're in today, that's what's gotten you to where you are. And that may, again, be quite successful. You've done the work, you've made the effort, and you've created perhaps a quite a good lifestyle. But once again, is that all there's going to be? Is that the fulfillment you're going to have? To really have an opportunity to expand one's horizons, you have to put yourself in other environments. My own example is that when I was in my dental career, obviously, I would go to a lot of continuing education courses for dentists. And that's important to stay up to speed, to gain new skill sets and new technical training in one's field. But I also took time and made time to put myself in other groups that were non-dental, entrepreneurial, different mindsets, different groups of people who really, really expanded my horizon on what else was possible. And I think if that's where you are today, if you're considering how do I expand where you are yourself? How do you expand that? How do you push against that comfort zone? You've got to be around other groups. Yes, it takes some time. It takes some investment. But remember, this is an investment in you. Investment in yourself is something that has an ROI, a return on investment, that goes on indefinitely for the rest of your life. And there's nothing like investing in yourself. So I would highly implore you to take the opportunity while you're still in a time in your life when you can do that. Take small steps. You don't have to do it all at once, but don't just stay in one place. That's just like treading water. And even though it feels comfortable because there's no waves to upset the boat, you need something to push you further. And to do that, you've got to be in a different environment. Place yourself there. See what happens. Learning how to create more financial security, more freedom, and generational wealth beyond just money takes hard work and a strong team around you to mitigate market volatility and prepare for both opportunity and the challenges ahead. It's a path few take. It's a journey of self-awareness, growth, and expanding what you thought was possible. The ones who have taken this road less traveled have discovered life-changing relationships, financial freedom, and a passion and purpose for life beyond that hamster wheel. If you're willing to brave traversing this path to create true wealth and freedom, then my team would love to discuss how we can help you. Go to freedomfounders.com/discover to schedule your call. That's freedomfounders.com/discover. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching so you don't miss a single episode of the Freedom Founders podcast. I'll see you next time.